Thanks. Jesus, you're embarrassed. All right, so we got Ben here. Honestly, it's a pleasure to meet you. First time meeting you here at EA Play. You're a developer for NHL 17. If you want to introduce yourself to the people that don't know who you are or the people that are, just go for it.
Yeah, official roles. I'm a gameplay producer on NHL 17. Over the last couple of years, worked a lot on gameplay and presentation.
Okay.
And work a lot closely with a lot of these guys too, because we have our Game Changers program too.
Definitely.
So it's been pretty awesome over the last couple of years, getting a chance to work so closely with the fans. And sometimes we're just on the forums and stuff like that, getting tons of information and feedback. And then you come to events like this, getting people a chance to kind of play the game firsthand. That's the feedback that I like to get the most. Because at big events like this, you're excited to talk about the new features, but I love to get into all the details as well, because that's really where I'm doing my job, is trying to make sure that all those subtleties feel right in the game. So hearing from people is
that's great.
Where we get the most feedback.
Yeah, the Game Changers honestly do a great job because provide a lot of feedback from the community. The community speaks so strongly, especially on Twitter and like even on YouTube and Twitch, able to relay that information to guys like you, get the stuff they want, get the stuff that they hear into the game. It works so well, especially the guys like why we're here right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. And we've got a lot of people working on our social channels all the time. It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
We got people talking to us on Facebook, through Twitter.
Yeah.
Like I said, through our forums and through other sub-forums and stuff on a lot of the other popular sports gaming sites. So it's a lot of information to collect.
Definitely.
So we've got people out there all the time, and that stuff comes directly through to me, and we're always putting that into our priority list and working through our top 10s, our top 50s, our top 100s. So yeah, just keep the feedback coming, because we listen to all of it.
Definitely. All right, so let's just get right on into it. So we got some questions. If you guys in the chat want to drop some questions in as well, if you have anything, feel free. We got them here for a little bit. So going through like some of the stuff on the blog, if you have, you're mostly with gameplay, we know we touch over a lot of stuff. If you wanted to speak about like some of the key improvements that are going to be highlighted in this new game, go for it. What are you most excited for?
Yeah,
the key improvements.
Yeah, so the great thing about it, and I think especially for core fans, is to know that although we've called out some key features in net battles and talking about the new save system for our goalies, those are massive improvements, but that doesn't mean that we haven't done a lot to all the other core systems. So we've dove into sort of minute kind of pieces of gameplay when it comes to passing, skating, hitting, poke checking, stick lifting, like you name it. Everything's been touched. And a lot of that comes from feedback from the community, right into the subtle details, say within skating, of like frame by frame changes to animations to make sure that we have the exact responsiveness that we want. So there's a lot of details we can get into, but definitely when it comes to the big features, adding net battles, that really came from feedback from the community that we wanted to make sure we could cover the weak side better. And that happens to do with like how we tune our goaltenders. People sometimes say that they're still too strong coming over on a cross crease, but we need to make sure we can cover that weak side on the defensive side. So some AI changes there, the new mechanic within net battle, so the AI can take advantage of it, but so can players. So if you're in the EA Sports Hockey League and you're locked as a defender, there's a whole mechanic there now where you have full control over how you tie a player up, what you're doing with their stick. If you're a big body, you're able to push them out. And at the same time, the offensive players have control as well. They can spin off of you. They can decide whether being tied up isn't that big a deal, because now it's kind of double body to affect the screen on the goaltender. There's a whole bunch of mechanics there that come out of adding a system like that.
Definitely.
So it's actually pretty awesome.
Yeah, I got my hands. While I'm here, I got to play some NHL 17. It's still a work in progress, as all these games are. Had a lot of fun. I noticed the net front battles were great. The goalie feature getting big, definitely huge. I saw a lot of saves where if it was like a reactionary save, could have a chance for like a bigger rebound or even potentially going in. And to get the stay big, is that I think the name for it? It worked great. And the guy I was using like Ben Bishop, and he's like probably like the perfect guy for that with his size, and it works perfectly. We have a question from Saad in the chat. Any word on how the net front battles will be initiated, or is the computers doing it themselves, or especially like even in ESHL, you can initiate them as the offensive player too?
Yeah, you can initiate them on both sides, and we're still kind of playing around with some things for balance. And right now, sort of back at the studio, a lot of guys are looking at even like where penalties come into play and stuff like that, because we don't want to all of a sudden introduce abilities to interfere with players. So there's a fine balance there, but that's all being looked into. But you can, as the offensive player, you can even sort of back down a defensive player and create that screen. And if you have that dominant position, You can be getting a stick on a puck still for a deflection.
Great.
You can roll off at the right time to get position for a rebound.
Okay.
And you'll see the AI doing that too.
Yeah.
There's these little moments here and there where I used to say like pass a puck over D to D and put a shot on for a deflection, and as that's happening, you're seeing the offensive player roll off, and that's creating a moment for a different rebound chance that we haven't seen in the game before, just because of the different mechanic and the different animations that are in there.
Yeah. And especially like some new mechanics, I saw the goalies like reactionary saves, and I saw one. I had Patrick Waugh through Draft Champions, got him, and he made an unbelievable reactionary save. If you want to go a little bit in depth on the reactionary saves that are new to the game, or somewhat new.
Yeah, so we added new animations, but I think the biggest thing with sort of the reactionary system is that's kind of how our goalies always played. They were always making these limb-based saves, and I think that's why when you hear people complaining about short side goals and the balancing we had to do there, it's partly it's partly due to people like the goalie having to cheat because there's another player open for the pass on the far side. But it was also because they only had a certain amount of glove saves. So if a puck was coming up short side, sometimes they would even turn their body to try and catch it with their glove, when really they could just stay big and use their shoulder. So now having that whole new slew of saves, they can be confident in that positioning, really cut off that short side and use their body, not necessarily have to use their limbs to make the saves. But that also means that when you are in the slot in those dangerous situations, because we often hear from people that I should have scored from there, a goalie would normally get beat. Because we now have the ability to sort of differentiate between the two, we could, if we want, slow the goalies down in those other scenarios so that they can be beat in those more vulnerable positions more realistically. So you'll actually see when it'll feel more realistic when they're making those reactionary saves, because they're slowed down to something that's a little bit more realistic without us having to compromise the short side. So it's actually helped in both areas, even though we focused on blocking saves.
Great. Got another great question in the chat coming in from Classic as Vlasic. That's a great name. Will it be an easier way to put in rebounds without having to complete control of the puck with the new Battle Net front presence, even without it?
Yeah, so we've worked on our shooting animations, and we've worked on different things around puck control, whether players can handle bouncing pucks. So all that kind of comes into our tuning, and that's a lot of what we're doing kind of at this stage in the product, is getting a lot of people to play the game and test it and give us that type of feedback. So we're making sure that like just our puck pickup system will help in that area, because we've added a lot more coverage. Players able to pick up pucks better with their feet, fix some issues with kind of for people looking more for the technical details, fix some issues with the IK and around our skate pickups and things like that. So all those things will help in rebound cases as well. But I think it's just a matter of battling for that position in front, with players sort of what we would have called kind of swimming around in the past. You couldn't really like hold that position. And I think all the changes between skating for a defender to be able to hold that ground on a player, and to Saad's comment about like how do you initiate the net battle, we wanted to go hand in hand with our board play, because people are used to holding down Y when they want to tie a player up. So since that's only contextual when you're near the boards, we're using that exact same mechanic when you're in front of the net. So you can hold Y, and whoever you're pressing into, you're essentially putting your body up against them and holding them off, but they can escape in any direction. So for people who played the game in the past, kind of previous net battle systems have been 2-player animations where you're both kind of tied in. We wanted to make sure it was very organic this year. So you're only really limiting the mobility of the player when they're trying to travel through you. And sometimes people are asking when we're putting in this feature, oh, but you're not seeing them as much as we thought. But it really depends on the scenario. So we said as a defender, if a player's heading away from you, that's okay, because now they're leaving the space that you just didn't want them to occupy. So much like the real world, it really depends on the situation. Whether it's a power play scenario, maybe you're going to see more players backing down in net battles.
Definitely.
But it's really contextual that way.
Okay, so like are there certain strategies that you could say like they will trigger more of them, or are there certain players that would trigger more, like a guy that's more of like a grinder, like maybe like Shaw always parks himself in front of the net. Are there certain guys that could trigger more? Are there certain like ways you can set your strategies up to get guys more in front of the net?
Yeah, so you can still set strategies that will park players in front of the net. Like if you're set up for an offense that's set to shooting, that inherently has players parked in front of the net more. But we haven't done as much necessarily just around the traits to say that this player is necessarily going to try for net battles, but just even the way the mechanic works, if you're a big body, no matter what, the defender's trying to push you out of there. But when they know that they can't, if they can't do a good job of actually moving you, it's there's a certain point where they know that there's sort of a screen on the goalie. So they may give up doing that for that reason. But if they are moving you and you get moved out by a certain amount, there's now sort of that gap in between sort of where the defender is and where the goalie is, and that's when the offensive player will roll around. So just in the way the mechanic works, smaller players are going to be more elusive because they're going to have to be, because they're getting pushed around more. And if you have a big body in front and they're standing their ground, they're confident standing there because they're now in a lane to deflect a puck.
Definitely.
So that kind of stuff almost takes care of itself in the way the mechanic works, in terms of the way the AI uses it.
Great. Question from Hope. If we could switch gears to ESHL, he's a big ESHL guy. Playing 6v6 net you any additional benefits compared to 5v5 or less? I hope if you want to expand on that more as we answer it. Do you understand where he's going per se, or?
Yeah, he might be talking in terms of just sort of like the rank points and things like that
Okay.
handed out. So I know that we'd still do. I don't know too many of the details actually myself, but I know that we still do reward teams more. Like there are some bonuses for having full sixes.
Okay.
Clubs and getting into those games. Yeah.
Great. Diving a little bit, we have some of the vlog here. Some of the celebrations. If we want to get into a little bit more of like a more exciting, but I'm super excited for this. I heard that there might be a dab.
Yeah, that went in there. So that was first request when we did sort of one of our first motion capture shoots. Even the guys came over from our comms team, and they were like, "You gotta add that in."
You gotta.
And so yeah, that's in there, and there's a whole bunch in there for people to have fun to unlock, and that's a big part of our progression system within the Esports Hockey League is adding some of that flair, like between the hair. There's some pretty good flow going on in our customization this year. And between that and the celebrations, there's some pretty good kind of bragging rights and the stuff that you get to unlock this year.
Great. I'm definitely excited for that. We have a question from a guy on Twitter. I asked for some of you guys. He said, any puck pickup improvements? You did talk about some. Are there any that you can elaborate on? Or?
Yeah, so we heard that loud and clear last year. I think there was kind of some conflicting things for people who know the game really in depth between sort of the seamless puck pickups and what that meant versus just our puck pickup mechanics and adding accountability for players. So I think that's an important thing to get into. And as we look to tune this year, we're listening to what the community wants and how do we encourage team play and things like that. And at the same time, staying realistic. So we often talked last year about pucks bobbling off your stick because you're picking up a puck on the backhand versus a forehand and things like that. That's still in the system, and that's still a big part of the physicality of being able to pick up a puck. But when it comes to seamless pickups, it's really a feature of, as you're picking up puck, what do you want to do next? And we heard feedback from people, especially when they're playing like a mode like Hockey Ultimate Team as opposed to playing player locked. They felt that the AI was triggering something that maybe was against their intent. And that was because they didn't have control of that player yet. So the AI might have wanted to perform an accelerating pickup when they actually wanted to go the opposite direction, things like that. So we really worked on that. And from a mechanic standpoint, now if you want an accelerating pickup, you need to be clicking in and holding down hustle. So that gives us some feedback through the controller of what your intent is. And we can use pieces like that to go through. And then we've added a ton of coverage. So there's a bunch of coverage. You'll see being able to pick up pucks through momentum with some of our turning pickups, so picking up pucks behind the net. Obviously, that valuable step is important, trying to pick up the puck and get going the opposite direction. So when it comes to responsiveness and stops and turns and pivots, they're all much better than they were. And the coverage is much greater, and we're continuing to tune it now. We get a lot of feedback from our team in terms of where we still have room to improve there, and we'll just keep going until we're done.
Definitely, yeah, I agree. I did feel some when I was playing the game, some of the new more puck pickups, gives you a lot more flow to the game, because sometimes the guy might have went the wrong direction last year, per se, and kind of stops your flow. And like you said, like you're trying to get a step on a guy, every step matters, every stride matters, and if you're held up a little bit, it could run into it. Chat absolutely loves the stuff about the flow being back, the jersey tucks being back, the celebrations. I'm totally excited for that. Jersey tucks, I missed those for a little bit, so I'm happy that stuff like that. Back to ESHL just for a second, the customization in that I'm excited for. You can customize your team, your arena, something new a little bit. Something I was like just lacking a ton, and I'm very excited. If there's anything else about that, or
so we've still stayed bold that we want the game to be completely balanced. I know there's a lot of people in the community looking for individual control over attributes. But at the same time, we really liked seeing where things went last year in terms of kind of equal playing field. A friend of yours picks up the product a couple weeks later, and I know there's kind of different ideas in the community in terms of what you should be rewarded with for putting in more games and putting more of that time. But we like seeing that the people putting in the time actually have just more skill on the sticks, as opposed to something that we've artificially given them through boosts and things like that. So to respond to that, we're going to be adding some new player classes, trying to fill in the gaps of what people are after there. People gave us a lot of feedback in terms of the type of player that they would want to create if they had that manual control. So we have a lot of that coming, and we'll give some more information as we get closer to launch. But we definitely listened, and we will be adding some more player classes and continue to listen to the community as we go through as well. But yeah, when it comes to customization, that's when you really get to kind of stuff that's not going to affect the balance of the game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you match up against somebody that has all these things unlocked, there's, like I said, there's a lot of bragging rights with it all. And
that's great.
When you move up from a small community rink all the way up to a top tier NHL arena, and you customize all your jerseys, there's some pretty cool stuff there.
Definitely. Like you were saying, like the player builds, because I understand like there's a lot of argument like we want to like create our own, but the player builds do keep it nice and balanced. I agree with that, because you can pick up the game at any point in the year and feel like even if you are better than the other guy, you don't have to like rack up a lot of games, put a lot of time under your belt, but you are still getting rewarded, like you're saying, with all that stuff. So that's going to be great to move forward with. I'm super excited for that. As far as stuff like Ultimate Team, you mind if we touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
One question was asked. What about the search filters for that? Is there any improvements that you know per se yet?
Yeah, when it gets into those details, I'm probably not the right person to ask, but we can definitely get you that info.
Okay, great. Go back into some of the points from the blog for sure. Goaltending. I got my hands on goaltending the other day. I got to play a little bit in the Draft Champions mode. We can go on that later as well. I felt like this year a lot more smoother as opposed to last year. Last year was new controllers, so some people had a hard time adjusting. This year, not so much of a change, but when you played as goalie, it did feel a lot better. If you have any points that you want to...
Yeah, so we've added some new mechanics, and we've also, same as I said, with our sort of core foundation of our regular gameplay, we've looked at just responsiveness. People complained that if they were if the goalie was starting to make a save or trying to make a movement and they actually recognized where the puck was going and they wanted to go somewhere else. So with the right stick butterfly slides, you can now exit out of animations and blend out of animations that you should be able to get going in the other direction. So as soon as you're able to plant and go back the other way, and that's added a ton of responsiveness. We got a lot of feedback, even when it came to sort of butterfly. When you went to go stand up, you can just press it again and drop right back down as opposed to having to fully stand up.
Great.
And like, every frame is so valuable when it comes to like a shot that's coming down low. So you'll have that. We also recognize if the goalie has gone into sort of an automatic save where he's dropped down, if you are pressing butterfly in that moment, that he'll retain that position as opposed to kind of missing these windows by a frame or two when it's so crucial, especially when you're playing online. So that'll add just a lot of responsiveness to the person playing the position. And then we looked at core mechanics. People talked a lot about being able to defend against wraparounds, get to their post in time. So even in breakaway situations, we allow for you to slide back and get into the post in more of like a butterfly lean. So you're really cutting off that seal in the post. So if someone's really trying to come in fast and just tuck one in short side, you have tools there. And then when the puck's below the goal line, you can just use the right stick as well, because we know that you're not really in a position where you're going to be using it for slides across for one-timers. That'll help you quickly go from reverse VH on one side of the net to the other side.
Great.
So you're kind of only one flick away as opposed to multiple buttons with modifiers. So that should really help there too.
Yeah, and when I was playing, I was talking to one of the guys that was there, and he was saying how the animations for the goalie, if he was hugging the post, the way he stacks his pads, the way he has his pads adjusted is a little bit different. I think if he's down in like the butterfly position, his pad will adjust differently as opposed to last year.
So there's some contextual behavior there, and we're even deciding, like, we're totally open to fan feedback as well in terms of what should be contextual and what we should have manual control over, because we talked a lot to the goaltenders that came in to do our motion capture shoots, and they were talking about it isn't really easy in the real world to be sliding right into a VH stance. Quite often you're sort of collapsing into the post and then standing up, or you're into hug post and then going down to VH. So it's contextual in that sense, that it makes sense from a physical kind of reality standpoint. And then we also look at like where the puck position is. So he'll seamlessly blend. If the puck's below the goal line, he's in reverse VH, and as it comes out higher, he's sort of cutting off that seal and getting bigger, because that's what you would intend to do. And you can still override that by going into a paddle down stance if you want. So there's a lot of control there, but at the same time, we're trying to match the physical reality and understand where the puck position is to help people play the position so they can focus more on their core positioning as opposed to so many modifiers on the control.
Great. Yeah, because I understand, like, as playing a goalie, sometimes wraparounds were tougher last year, and like quickly going after that is great, because it kind of almost like deters the player from doing that and forces them to almost play you a different way, which is great. I love the way that direction of that is going. So I'm very happy with that. As far as Draft Champions, for the guys that weren't there, I was able to play some here, and it was great. There were currently like 4 different selection processes. Alumni was one, if we're allowed to explain.
Yeah, that's fine for you to go through
Yeah,
and sort of explain what it was from your standpoint.
Yeah, when you got into the game, what you guys were able to do was in Draft Champions you could play online or solo, and then before you draft, as opposed to like Madden Draft Champions or FIFA FUT Draft, you got to select almost like your class of like players that would be going into. It would almost like give you a better chance of getting certain guys. So you can go with alumni. All Stars was another one, two-way, and I blanked out on the fourth one.
Yeah, there might have been like more of like a tough guy, big players. Yeah.
And I went with the alumni one as the first. No, I went with the All-Star one as the first one, and the alumni as well. I got guys like Patrick Waz, my first one of the goalies I got, and I was astounded with him. And you kind of like get to see more and more of those guys in the draft. And honestly, what Draft Champions opens up is a chance to like unlock more rewards, different type of gameplay, and to get to test some of the guys in Hockey Ultimate Team that you may not be able to get if you don't have the coins, if you're no money spent guy. So I totally love that. Totally love that. So if you want to go into Draft Champions, feel free.
Yeah, so it's going to be a cool mode, like you said, for people to get a sort of a taste of what Hockey Ultimate Team is, but a bit more surface level. And it's going to be updated throughout the year with what's going on in Hockey Ultimate Team as well. So as sort of Player of the Week cards and different things like that come out, people will be able to see those players show up in Draft Champions as well. So it'll be an evolving system.
Yeah.
It's not just locked. So each of those categories, as you mentioned, are kind of themes that will be kind of ever evolving to keep people going in there and seeing what some of the new players look like.
Yeah.
But you can go head-to-head online. So in Hockey Ultimate Team, you're sort of chasing those players and trying to put together a team, and some of those players are really tough to get. So you can actually see what it's like more from a fantasy draft standpoint when you're kind of given some of these better players right off the bat. And like you said, from some of the themes, you can kind of start with the way that you kind of want to shape your team, but at the same time, you'll be given some pretty cool players that are fun to play with along the way. So it's kind of a mix of that fantasy draft and what people would do if they kind of put together that ultimate sort of fantasy team, players past and present. But then you get to go toe-to-toe with somebody else who's had that same ability. So it's not necessarily as kind of core as Hockey Ultimate Team, where it takes some time and a lot of luck in some cases to get some of those players. You get to put them together and go toe-to-toe right away.
Yeah, and when I was playing it, I noticed one thing. Like, the drafts are usually like there's some randomness to it, but they are helping you in some ways. I noticed like one thing, you are able to play guys out of position. So I drafted I think like 4 centers, and like my fourth line center was a stud. So I paired guys like Tyler Seguin on the wing. I just threw him on the wing, and you're able to like move your team around. You also got to realize it's only 4 picks, as some of them they're 5. Madden's 3, FIFA's 5, and NHL's 4. And there's some times where you have to like think to the future. Like I could have got myself a Crosby, but I knew I was so set in another position. I picked a guy like Drew Doughty because I needed a defenseman. You have to like make a strategic pick, and it's also can shape around how you play. So I'm totally excited. I personally think this is my favorite Draft Champions out of all the 3 that I played, and I'm totally excited to see, like you said, as the year goes on, you can see like new classes almost for the players. I'm totally excited for that.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I think that when I played it the other day, I'm always looking at just goalie being such a important position.
Yeah.
When a great goaltender, say Jonathan Quick, shows up and you've got a Crosby to pick at the same time, you sort of go through that thought process of like, am I going to just bury a bunch of goals, or do I need to be able to keep them out of my net? And then you decide that you're going to pick Quick, and then 3 rounds later, Patrick Wall shows up, and you're like, I should have picked Crosby before. So there's definitely some cool factor there in terms of how you strategize, not knowing what's going to come up in the future.
Definitely, and this could be like, it's going to open up to so many doors, like we said, and other game modes. Like you can unlock rewards through it, and jumping like this is a good segue into like Hockey Ultimate Team, even though you may not specialize in it all that much. It's great because like for Hockey Ultimate Team, the HUT Synergy, if you know that, if you want to go explain into that a little bit.
Yeah, I can explain it at a high level. There's definitely some more depth, especially for some of the core guys here that play tons of Hockey Ultimate Team. They'll be excited to hear some of the details as we get closer to launch. But it's basically like a brand new system. When we had our Game Changers come in, they were giving us a ton of feedback as well as in terms of sort of what synergies would click for them, for both player and team, and where the balance would be and that kind of thing. So we're getting a ton of feedback sort of right off the top from players who know the systems really well and kind of know how Hockey Ultimate Team's played in the past with the chemistry system. So now you can get a player like a Patrick Kane, and it's not just because he's not playing in a line with a teammate who doesn't happen to play on the same team as him that he's not going to be able to perform at his potential. Kind of gone are the days where all of a sudden he's playing below just because you don't have like the team matching cards and things like that. So now you have these guys performing the way that they should, and the way they get drafted and how skilled they are, but you have the opportunity to have them to rise above by matching players of similar skill, and basically these synergies are elements that sort of different ways that these players play. So you might have dirty danglers, or you might have big hitters. And if you have a certain way that you want to play, you might start chasing some of these synergies to make sure that those players sort of play above their potential when they're all sort of like-minded and playing of the same style. And you can do the same thing for your team. And that also makes a lot of the players that may have been discarded in the past, they may have a synergy that helps you kind of create that collection. So it actually adds value to some players that otherwise might not have made your lineup. And that leads into what we've added in sets.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect.
So now you've got a bunch of players that otherwise, like I say, may have been discarded in the past, and you're hanging on to them because you may not even know they may be valuable a week from now when a brand new set comes out.
Yeah.
And now they're going to be part of that collection. So I think that you'll find a lot of people over time, the value of players is kind of going up and down depending on what's out there in the community and what items you have to sort of trade these sets in for. So it's going to create a lot of sort of more dynamics than have been there in the past.
Definitely, yeah. And like it's such a tough thing, like where you go in and you just discard a card because it doesn't have value. But now when you add value to a card, certain cards could be super rare just for one set. And the synergies too, like a certain amount of players would give those players with the same synergy a boost in their stats, right? Correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Other stuff, so GM mode, franchise mode, those stuff. Be a pro even. Are there any, as for be a pro, like some guys I know, they'll take a little bit of a dip, but is there anything you can give to about be a pro?
Yeah, so here at EA Play, it's been kind of a funny year because we kind of been giving like a high-level deck to people coming by to kind of see what's going on, and everyone's been going like, wow, there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can kind of talk about our feature set in kind of like three kind of main buckets, but really by listening to all the fans, and there's so many modes that people have as their favorite modes, kind of gone into everything and tried to do something to enhance all those experiences. So it's within Be a Pro, the big feature is sort of hitting those moments properly. So we didn't do a very good job in the past of making sort of your first goal feel as big as it is. You never saw the puck being flipped to a trainer to be taped up, or and those moments will be in franchise mode as well. So if you trade for a player and they're playing their first game, the commentary team, the fans with the signs, they all know about it. They're sort of welcoming that player. They have certain expectations of what they're going to do, and you might even be in a franchise playing an away team for a player who's currently going for their 500th career goal. And if they mark it in that game, then you're kind of part of that presentation and that kind of thing. So it really adds to the living and breathing world that's going on around you, and that's the kind of stuff that we always get asked, like what makes Game 10 of a season different than Game 70?
Yeah.
Other than just sort of the chase for those playoff spots and sort of within the standings and the statistics side, there is a lot more story there. There's a lot more emotion.
Exactly.
Sort of these living and breathing players that have a lot more going on outside, like before and after the game that you're currently playing.
Yeah, exactly. Like getting yourself tied into a game emotionally is probably one of the best feelings ever. Like guys chasing for like goal milestones, just milestones in general is great. As for like franchise mode or be a GM mode, is there anything that you want to?
Yeah, so it's so now, like you said, franchise mode. So that's the big change. So GM mode is now franchise mode. Gone are the days where you kind of have full control, where you just sort of have your salary cap and can do sort of as you please, because now you have an owner to answer to. So you're looking at budgets and things like that. There's a lot of people I know that kind of are those couch GMs and they know what their GM would do, but there's a lot of reasons within certain cities and certain expectations and depending on kind of how passionate the fan base is, what kind of attendance you're getting and things like that manipulate what you have to spend. So now you have the opportunity to dive in and all of that stuff now affects kind of how you run your team as well. So it's going to be pretty exciting for people to get in there and start getting to some of those details that they haven't had a chance to use in the past.
Definitely, yeah. Especially like modes where like you have to almost like answer to like another player, like there's more backstory to it. You're gonna have to like make those decisions yourself, and you got more pressure on yourself, and it can have a ton of consequences. Guys in the chat, if you have questions, keep them coming. As for commentary, were there any improvements on that?
Yeah, so with the focus on story, we've done a lot there. They're much more aware of kind of where you are in your season, definitely like statistical records and milestones that you're breaking. Like say they know that you just traded for a player, or a team you're playing against has just got a new player in their lineup, and how that's going to affect kind of the dynamic of things. When it comes to the milestones in season, like they may be telling you, and some of these things for some people may be small things, but it's really about sort of really kind of enriching that experience and making it feel, like I said, like they'll be talking about preseason and making sure that you understand why those games are different than the season games or the last game before the playoffs. If you're chasing for that point and trying to get into 8th spot, they'll know about some of that kind of stuff. So I think it's going to add a lot of depth for people to just they don't have to kind of bring that fantasy side. The game is actually encouraging a lot of that as well and letting you know where you are. So
that's great. So the commentary team, people are asking, that's staying the same. We got Doc as well.
Doc and Eddie. So those guys are fantastic to work with. And then between the benches, we still got Ray Ferraro. Perfect. So it's been a lot of fun working with those guys. I get the opportunity throughout the year to sit in on some of those sessions. And we've got David Pritchett, who's our brand new presentation producer. He's worked really closely with those guys, done a lot of recording days. That have been both in Vancouver and in Chicago. And like the amount of lines in the script and stuff is like you'd be surprised at how much has been done, and that's what's really adding to the depth within a Moments feature, and that's what's so great about being able to have it in both Be a Pro and in franchise, is that regardless of the mode you're playing, you're able to hear that content and have that experience enriched.
Great. As for our presentation, like you were just saying, is there anything else that you haven't touched on yet that you want to address?
Yeah, so within that presentation, within those moments, it's not just them talking about it. There's new camera angles, there's some new intros, and really kind of the whole package in the way that's presented. So people will notice that right away when they go into some of these arenas, and kind of just the artists do such a fantastic job of replicating these real-world arenas that we wanted to make sure we're doing justice and making sure we're getting the camera angles to show them off. And what makes one arena different than the other. Definitely. So you'll see, even stuff at that level, you'll see that. And then when you work through the progression of EA Sports Hockey League, the customization for me is a ton of presentation as well, because especially when they had the game changers in playing in the community rink, they were like, oh, like we're kind of talking about like how long it takes to progress through or how many wins it takes. And they were like, oh, like I'd like to stay in this arena and play for a while, because it's just something new, and it felt like a different experience because it's more intimate. There isn't the massive crowd. And it's just some different experiences we're able to give people that we haven't had before. So
definitely, cool. That's great. Someone asked a question about draft champions, like the ability to continuously do it over and over. If you don't like your draft, you're able to redraft, if that is correct, right?
Yeah, you can redraft, and then otherwise you're sort of progressing through rounds, trying to kind of unlock those items depending on how you do, and it progressively gets kind of tougher as you go, and you're matching them against people online. So if you get through, you don't like your draft, you can do it again. And if you go through and you sort of lose out, then start all over again. So there's some cool like quick competition in there to get against other people, and other people will constantly be redrafting as well. So there'll be a lot of different teams that you face along the way.
Exactly. Yeah, like streamers, YouTubers, anybody, like this is like another like step of like content for you guys, like to just do. Like if you don't like your draft, just do it again, or you can just continuously try to get like a certain type of draft if you want, or like overalls, like we see in like all different other types of draft champions, people go for a certain overall, and like as the year goes on, you could see guys getting released that can almost boost you up to the high overall. It just opens up so much more door for content for people, and stuff for people to be doing.
Oh yeah, for sure. When you're streaming stuff, I think it just opens up the question. If you had a chat live and you just ask people that question, Crosby or Quick, or Crosby or Malkin, and I think that that alone would just spark a bunch of conversation for people as to who's the right person to pick, and that might change based on who you picked in the previous round. Like you said, you loaded yourself up with a bunch of centers, we're able to utilize those players, and it's pretty cool that you could switch positions, but then you could also talk to a lot of people like, oh, what's this guy's shot coming off the left wing different to how he plays as a center. So that alone I think will generate a lot of kind of buzz for people that are streaming and stuff like that. So
as for like players, like I guess like ratings, if you do move them out of position, do they take a knock as in their ratings or attributes at all? Like a guy that plays center, if he plays a wing, do they ever take a knock? Or
I actually don't know if we're doing that or not.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, the big thing moving away from chemistry was actually that the players did play at their potential, because we talked about players. There is some reality there, but a lot of these guys, they're such great athletes that it's really sort of the pairing. Sometimes it's speculation from media in times. It's like, oh, this guy's not performing because he's not used to playing with this player. There is some reality in that, but at the same time, we're doing a little less within a system to kind of knock players down, and it's more about the synergy they bring to play above their potential when you sort of match those like-minded players.
Definitely. And again, guys, for the draft champions, you are able to go through all your lines. Like you can change any power play 4-on-4 lines, everything. You get full openness to that. That's what I was doing. I was going through mine, changing it. If you do draft, like if you only are given like right defenseman, you can move some guys from right defenseman to left defenseman, give yourself a chance. Like so you're not stuck with the core team. The core team isn't terrible. I don't know if that is also a work in progress as well, but I had like Dennis Weidman as one of the guys that started on my team, and I said to myself, I don't really need a right defenseman. I'm able to go out there, hold off that position, maybe load up on forwards, and then come back and address that position later on. So
yeah, so I think there's going to continue to be tuning both in sort of what you receive as options for the picks and then how that base team works out. But yeah, they'll definitely be like a capable like core team. It's just a matter of sort of where you want to the positions you want to excel in, and then again just how you match up your lineup. Like you said,
definitely.
you've made a choice to sort of focus on one area where somebody else might just decide to continue to load up defense just because of the style of the way they play.
Definitely. World Cup of Hockey, I think is coming up soon. As for you, who are you rooting for?
Oh, Canada.
All right, I got USA. You're probably gonna end up winning, but still, I'm excited for that. It's gonna be in the game. Do we know any details? As is it gonna be like an online feature, or solely offline?
Yeah, it's an offline feature. The great thing for us is coming out with the game coming out in September, and with such a sort of focus and all eyes on the World Cup, it's gonna be pretty fun to have that experience in the game. People have already had a lot of buzz about sort of those jerseys and things like that. They'll be available throughout the game, and those players, and it's going to open up some opportunities for us to do some cool things in a Hockey Ultimate Team and stuff like that as well. So, I think people are sort of asking, especially with the customization features, will those jerseys be available there? And still maybe some things to come, stuff for us to look into. But yeah, really excited to have the license in there, and the cities in Toronto is going to be a buzz when the tournament's going on, so it only makes sense for us to have that as part of our product when we want to be directly tied to the NHL and what the NHLPA is doing.
Great. I saw a question in the chat earlier. Is there any improvement on some dekes or like fine tuning on some of the dekes, or are the dekes going to be relatively all like the same?
Overall, it's similar, same system. So there's always tuning that goes in. We're always looking at the balance of like whether a player should be able to keep a puck when they're performing a deke. And it's funny when I still like read on the forums, and in terms of player balance, you can tell kind of what position people play, because it's defense is too strong, and then right on the other side, someone's saying, oh, the offense is too strong. So we did a lot last year to kind of add that accountability, so that if you were a player that didn't necessarily have great hands, you weren't going to keep the puck just kind of doing the same deke over and over again. You kind of had to be smart about the way that you played. So in the eSports Hockey League, if you're picking a dangler, you're going to get away with a lot more than if you're picking an enforcer, for sure. So that's still like very much part of it. And then at the same time, we've worked on to counter some of the dekes as well. We've worked on the defensive side within our checking. So a whole bunch of new stuff went into hit, sort of the way we track players and the way we throw hits, making sure they're throwing it to the right place, because people always said that they felt kind of that, they were calling it the bubble. Yeah. But it isn't as much that as it's just the hit tracking and the way the players are sort of pivoting and able to get there. So we've looked into that very closely and made sure that we can, when you should be able to lay a hit, you should be able to lay a hit. And we really worked on those like lower relative speed collisions, so that I can actually push a player off the puck if I'm big and strong enough, and that feels much better, because I know people hate the puck hogs and they hate like protecting the puck and sort of manipulating the system to a point where it's kind of breaking reality. So we look back at that, and that should encourage a lot of team play, and the way that we tune puck pickups and passing. I think you'll see a lot more puck moving teams now than sort of the puck hogs that nobody likes to play with.
Definitely. When I was playing the game yesterday, felt like you really needed to, didn't need to, but like when you squared up a guy well, you really squared him up, and you're able to really move him off the puck well. And from all different types of guys, I had like Brett Burns, and he was able to like lay like a nice hit on someone. It wasn't like a bone-crushing hit or anything, but it was still able enough to separate it from the puck and move it. So I definitely do notice a difference in the hitting. The checking's a lot better. I do agree with that. As for around the net, there's been like pickups behind net in the past have been a little bit tougher if it gets like stuck like behind the net or whatever. Is there any improvements so
we're trying to do that within our pickup system. We've still had some feedback there. It's actually a tough balance for us, because you're trying to, again, match the reality of making sure that like pucks aren't going through the net and things like that, because you get a lot of feedback there in terms of that breaking the realism. But at the same time, it's having enough fidelity for a player to play a pickup when they're sort of banging into the net. So there's probably still a few things like there in that area that we could continue to improve on.
Definitely.
But as we sort of improve these core systems, give you more control over your skater, add more coverage to the pickups, all those things will just get better. And I know that people had the biggest complaints with the AI and around their net. So on breakouts, they're much improved there. The flow of the ice, sort of the way that they understand whether they should be carrying the puck or head-manning the puck, you'll see a lot more sort of flow from the AI through the neutral zone. And I know that's made a big improvement, both for when you're playing as a player lock position in a BIA Pro or an EA Sports Hockey League when you're using AI players, but also when you're playing against AI teams. They're kind of giving you some different looks and coming in with a lot quicker, sort of quicker transitions.
Definitely.
Which wasn't really the case in the past.
I have no idea what that is.
Starting a dance show here or something.
Yeah. So I'm definitely excited for the AI making breakup passes behind net, because they're so key, because not everyone like in ESHL can wrap up 6 guys or plays defense enough where they have confidence to get back there, and a guy making a breakup pass from behind net is key. It's huge. Question to chat if you want to do it. Feel free. As for Hockey Ultimate Team, if you know anything, if you're able to answer some of these, like some people are asking questions about trades or even the last price sold aspect, if it's going to be like updated or fine tuned at all? If
With
you're
the
able
Hockey
to?
Ultimate Team?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm probably not the right
That's
guy
fine.
to,
That's totally
to
fine.
answer those, unfortunately.
I think people are more excited towards like the gameplay aspect. As for I am, if we're expecting like a trailers or anything else, is there any time soon that you can let these guys know on like a release date or if it's coming soon?
Yeah, so the game's coming out in September.
Okay.
And then you can sort of stay tuned to the NHL Awards where
Okay.
we'll be showing our first trailer.
Great.
And a lot more is going to be revealed at that time. So stay tuned for that. I know sort of people will be tuned in as core NHL fans to kind of see what's going on at the awards themselves. But we're excited about our announce there. You'll get to see who was sort of the winner of the cover vote and
Awesome.
a lot of things being unveiled on that date. So.
Awesome. Like, who are you rooting for the cover vote?
I can't tell you who I'm rooting for. I don't know if it gives things away
That's
one
fine.
way
That's
or
fine.
the other. We're happy with whoever whoever makes the cover. The thing that I think is great about the cover vote is you sort of see the passion of the fans and the players who just the campaigns that they put together as they're sort of going through, and then you just see the passion of the fans for each of the sort of two teams and for those players kind of coming out of the woodwork to make sure that their player gets on the cover. So it's just another cool thing that goes on throughout the year outside of just cheering for their teams in the playoffs. Kind of a side element. You saw kind of those teams that were remaining in the playoffs and their players kind of rising up and sort of within the cover vote too. So yeah, no, we'll see.
That's awesome.
Yeah, nothing to give away at this point.
And maybe one of the last questions. Could they be expecting a beta / demo, or like we saw last year with ESHL? Is there anything, or maybe like even with like EA Access per se? Yeah,
no announcements on that stuff, but that's definitely all the types of things that we're looking at. I think that the way that the beta went last year, it was fantastic. Anytime we can get feedback from fans, and like I say, we've only done things but expand stuff like our Game Changers program to get more and more fan feedback. So we're always going to be looking at opportunities to get feedback early, feedback often. We present our game as a live service, so that's why we are putting out patches and updates and things like that. So the more we can get feedback and the earlier we can get it, the higher chance we can get that stuff into the game. So.
Yeah, exactly. And guys, remember it is June. Games doesn't come out till September. We got a long summer ahead of us. Stuff is it's a work in progress. A lot of these games, a lot of stuff you see. So I'm excited to see that. If you guys have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Otherwise, I think we're almost done here. It's great. I really did appreciate you coming and speaking to these guys.
Happy to talk about the game. I think the only thing that's sad is that everybody in the chat doesn't get a chance to play it.
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah, if you're in the area, come by, because I know they're sort of opening up the doors for people to come by and play the games and stuff like that. But if not, stay tuned sort of for the NHL Awards, and there'll be a lot of info there. And hopefully we'll be able to do some live streams and stuff of us playing the game. I know that people want to see gameplay. But it's really just one of those things, just like last year, we always said it's you can kind of speculate from what you see. We were showing people kind of how pucks came loose and things, and it wasn't until people got their hands on it they could really tell. So we're looking forward to when we can get it in people's hands.
Definitely. So yeah, I again, like just from playing myself, it got me so hyped for this game. Some people that aren't able to play it, if I could just say for myself, I really did enjoy it. Got to play a few games. I'm really super excited for it. Like all these games here, it's been great. It's been a great experience. So. Appreciate you coming on, having a great time. You guys definitely did enjoy it. Has answered a lot of great questions for the guys that aren't able to come down and play or anything. So,
awesome. Thanks a lot for having me on.
All right, great. And we'll this thing will be archived. So if anyone wants to see you guys